everybody. Joe Gilder from HomeStudioCorner.com here. I'm going to talk to you today about subgroups. Subgroups are immensely helpful in mixing, especially. I use them all the time. In every mix that I do, there's at least 2 or 3 subgroups, sometimes more, sometimes less. But it's a really useful tool for several reasons. And first off, let me just explain what a subgroup is. You may be using subgroups you may have never even thought about using them. Subgroups is essentially taking a group of tracks, for example, a drum kit, where there's 8 to 10 to 12, even 14 tracks, and grouping them, not necessarily grouping them, it's actually sending them to a dedicated fader and summing all of those together. So I've done that in this mix here. You'll see there's all these drum tracks, and they're being routed to a bus, which is feeding into this auxiliary track. So all the drums are coming through right here. And that's the first key point, is that you wanted to have one fader for multiple tracks. Not all the time, but there's a lot of situations where I have a group of tracks that I want them to be together, and I just want one fader. If I need more of that particular instrument, like drums, I can grab the fader and just move that one fader up and down. There's a difference between subgroups and actual groups. You can group tracks in Pro Tools using the group feature, and that actually lets you turn everything up and down like that. But I don't like that nearly as much, because if I then want to go adjust the snare drum, they're still all grouped together. So not a big fan of that. So I usually turn the groups off. I'll use groups for certain things, but for mixing, I use a subgroup. All these are feeding into this bus here, and I can adjust each individually to adjust the balance of the drums, but the entire drum sound is being fed through this bus, and we have one fader. The second thing that I like to do with subgroups is processing. You'll notice that since it's all running through one fader, that I've got plugins available. If I want to process all of these drums, the entire sound of the drum kit, through a compressor, I can come up here and I can do that, and that's no problem. And then I can get a compressed sound for the drums entirely, and then still be able to compress the kick and the snare and the overheads individually. Or maybe I just need to EQ the drums, or maybe add some different types of effects. I can do that on a single fader with a single plug-in, and now if we hit play, I'm processing all the drums. Well, we won't do that. I'm processing all the drums through a single compressor right here. That's pretty useful. So you can do all sorts of tricks there. It's easy to overdo it, but if you're careful, it's a really great, useful tool for that. And then finally, along the same lines as this, we can do what's called parallel processing. I've got a few videos on this, and you should check those out for more in-depth examples of how to parallel process drums and bass and a few other things. But parallel processing means I've got the drums already routed to a subgroup right here on this drum track. I can actually duplicate this track, and now I've got the drums coming in on 2 sets of faders instead of 1. This is helpful because if I want to leave the drums unprocessed on this fader, no compression, no EQ, but maybe I want to throw a really aggressive compressor on this second one, now I can blend the two together. I've got the benefits of a heavily compressed sound without all the downsides, and I've got those two to blend together. So parallel processing isn't possible unless you first group these tracks together and are sending them through a single fader. A couple quick examples of how I use subgroups in this particular mix. I've got the drums going here. I've got the kick drum and the bass actually going to their own mono subgroup, and I'm compressing those together. Acoustic guitars here are going into that stereo subgroup, and I didn't group electric guitars, but that's not uncommon for me to do as well. I'll even send my entire mix through a subgroup before I send it out my main outputs. So I'm a big fan of subgroups. Hopefully after watching this video, you are too. Go check it out next time you're mixing. It can be a big benefit to your mixes. Again, I'm Joe Gilder from HomeStudioCorner.com. If you want to check out how I mix a lot of my songs from my latest album, go to mixwithus.com. It's a cool training course there. You can check it out, mixwithus.com. Thanks.